Today we have the privilege of interviewing Sue Sinclair, and she is one of the leaders from Liverpool, and she is part of a ministry. She heads up a ministry called Community Watchmen Ministries. So welcome, Sue. Lovely to have you with us. And do you want to just tell us a little bit about what Community Watchmen Ministries is about and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Community Watchmen Ministries is about prayer and the prophetic. It's very dynamic in that we really work at hearing God, listening carefully and doing what he says, which actually is a lot easier than it sounds at times. And so when we're listening to him and when we hear what he wants us to do and to pray, we see just incredible breakthroughs happen, which is really exciting. So that's one kind of arm of what I do. Then the other arm of what I do is called Liverpool Catalyst. And Liverpool Catalyst is all about projects in the community. So all the things like the street passes and food banks and working with sex workers and working in prisons, working with the homeless. So we've got about 112 projects. And so those two things kind of really dovetail really powerfully together to provide a space where God can really come in power and really do dynamic things. So we've been really working carefully not to build a structure like this, but to build something that just is partnering and encouraging others to partner in, so that we see God getting all the glory and we see some amazing things happening. So that's kind of what I do. Most of the time I work with the leaders across the region as well, and across the nation and nations. So I don't have a lot of spare time.
You're a busy woman. Oh, bless you. And I know that you do the Big Push, which is the event that you do once a month. And I've been along a few times, and it's an amazing event, and you're now online as well. So I have kind of watched it online. So that's an amazing event if people want to log into that.
It's a real shock actually for us, to be honest.
It's a steep learning curve, isn't it?
We've been doing it for like 11 and a half years. This is our 12th year, but we're really privileged because we happen to have the most amazing worship leader who actually also is a BBC engineer. And so he has just brought things to a whole new level, which has just been incredible. So we've had literally thousands of people watching online, which is over the month, because it's available on our website. If anyone wants to watch, they just go on our website and click on the lion, so it makes it nice and easy for them to see. But it's been just so incredible, and we're really, really encouraged. And God is using the coronavirus to really get us to up our game considerably, I think. And when they're learning new skills, and I've had to buy a tripod to put my camera on, and all these little microphone, and at the age of 60 I'm learning all these new things, so it's good.
Yeah, definitely. Same here. It's been a steep learning curve in terms of learning new technologies and learning how to administrate on Zoom meetings and things like that. But it's amazing because we're seeing God kind of take us so much further than if we'd been physically in the building. So
I've been privileged to be in a Zoom group now that meets across the world with ambassadors and senators and all kinds of amazing people, and that's twice a week, which again is tiring because it doesn't start till 9:30 our time at night, but actually it's just been incredible. And in all of these things, God is just kind of raising your game, it's raising our game really, and that's a good thing.
So what are the impacts that you've seen, particularly in the Liverpool northwest area, from the lockdown, and and the outcome from that really? And are there any issues that that have been raised in that time, particularly to
I think talking about the church has been probably busier than ever, and I think the Lord gave me a prophetic word earlier in January to say that he was closing the doors of the church, and I actually thought that would be some churches that have been hanging on. But actually God doesn't exaggerate, and he's literally closed the doors of the church. And I really believe this is a season where God has come as the great shepherd of the sheep, and John 10, it says, the shepherd comes and the sheep recognize his voice and follow him out. And I've been kind of praying and prophesying that for a long time. People have heard me say that, but actually God meant it, and he's literally leading his people out. And I know that where Christians are out and about in the community, they are really making a powerful difference. So we've had to start like a food bank for sex workers, because that's really difficult for them to, actually go into the other food banks that are around the region. I think just watching how people are helping one another and partnering with one another for the sake of the community is just a blessing, really is a blessing. So in terms of the church, I think most of the church is more active than it's ever been, and not in a great hurry to go back into the buildings, to be honest. I think and I think it's really powerful what God is doing. On the other side of things, we've been really sad that we've not been able to have a proper celebration of Liverpool winning the cup. We've been promised that's going to happen at some point. There'll be a big parade, so so we're looking forward to that. And there's a lot of great things happening. One of the things I kind of wanted to share was I was on Facebook Live with Betty King just a few weeks ago, and we were talking about Liverpool's history as a transatlantic slave port, and the work that we've done in Cape Coast in Ghana, where many of the slaves that were taken by Liverpool boats were taken from. And in the midst of the conversation, I just felt happen, like this power surge, like something massive had just happened. And both Betty King and I didn't know, we were not aware during the conversation that George Floyd had just been killed. Oh, wow. But I knew something powerful had happened, and I came off the call and said to my team, what has just happened? Because sometimes you're a bit oblivious when you're in the midst of a conversation like this. You don't necessarily see what is happening. My mum has just arrived. We just have to pause. Sorry. Can we pause and come back to it?
Yeah.
Sorry, just bear with me. Sorry about that.
No.
So we hadn't realised during the call that George Floyd had been murdered. Yeah. And of course, it's a terrible thing to say, but we all know that so many Black people have been murdered in similar ways. And these situations are just brushed under the carpet, and life goes on, which is horrendous, absolutely horrendous. But I knew that this time it was different, and God was on, doing something really powerful and sweeping everything out into the light, which is really what has been needed for a long, long, long time. And for us in Liverpool as a slave port, it has had a really powerful impact, actually. As it has on many places around the world, with people choosing to go out and protest despite the coronavirus. But the great thing was for us, before coronavirus, God had told us to go and pray at St. George's Hall in Liverpool. And so I'd said to various leaders around the region, please can you go? Please can you take your congregations? Please can you just go and worship and pray? And God gave us a window of time to do that. And so even our friends at Victory Outreach went and worshipped and prayed, and it was great. And what we didn't know was we were preparing the ground for what was to come. And of course, when George Floyd was murdered, Liverpool came out and protested despite the coronavirus restrictions. Now, thankfully, they came out with masks on, and they came out and they behaved really well, social distancing, but they all gathered at St. George's Hall. And I really believe there was no trouble whatsoever, because we prayed already, ahead of the protest. Yeah. And I think it's great, that we had so many people that felt really passionate about it, and that is really important. So what we're seeing right now, and what we're working with, and what we're looking to see breakthrough in, is, Liverpool, God has spoken to us and said, in 2005, we've repented a lot about the slave trade, and God has forgiven us for that. Whilst we've been working in Cape Coast and helped them with the Cape Coast apology in 2018, they issued a declaration of forgiveness to Liverpool, and so we are the first slave place in the world that God, has forgiven, and Africa has also forgiven, which is just really incredible. Yeah, nice. However, on the ground, there's still a lot of work to be done, because people don't know about that. And so we've met with Mayor Joe Anderson, and he's talked about the possibility of Liverpool twinning with Cape Coast. And in these weeks since George Floyd's death, there's been a young man called Lawrence, and Lawrence has been doing these walks around Liverpool for quite some time. He's an incredible historian, and he takes people around the streets of Liverpool, around the buildings, that were bought and paid for with slave money. And instead of destroying things and pulling things down, he's actually very positive and wanting to redeem. And we had this conversation with Joe Anderson actually last year, and said, we cannot but bring buildings down like St. George's Hall, or, most of Liverpool would be gone if we had to remove everything. But what we need to do is redeem it, and we need to be able to tell the story and learn, from the horrible history, really. And so, I really believe God is going to do something dynamic. Lawrence is taking these people on tours and, telling everyone, no, we're not going to change the names. No, we're not going to pull down this, that, and the other, but actually we're going to do something really positive. And so they're looking at, establishing a monument to slaves. Liverpool had slaves, came to the city, and they were buried in our graveyards, in our churches that were paid for with slave money. So I can really see God cleansing the church on a whole new level, which desperately needs to be done. So I think that is certainly something that we would ask you to pray for as we meet with church leaders, and we look at the history, and we look at some of their graveyards with unidentified people in, because they belonged to somebody else. They were not allowed to have their own name on a grave, which is just horrendous. So they're looking to have a monument, for all the slaves that came to Liverpool and died in Liverpool. Which I think is really important. And I can imagine God using all of that, not only to cleanse the land, but actually to be something that people from all over the world will be able to come and see, how to redeem horrible history, how to bring real reconciliation and healing, which I think is really important. So we've got a lot happening, with leaders who are gathering together on the Zoom calls, which is great. And we had a very painful call last week, which I think quite a few cities may have done, in that we've had some of our Black brothers and sisters sharing, some of their experience, which was not good. And many of us were in floods of tears, but it's something we need to hear, because God is cleansing the church, and he's sweeping out all this stuff that is just disgusting, and needs to be dealt with, so it's very humbling, it's very heartbreaking, but actually it's also very exciting because God is in the midst of it all, really. And I think there's a huge Black community, in Liverpool, and I think when this work is done, it will make a way for them to really see the church as a positive place and not just a place that has, controlled and manipulated as in the past, really. So, and when I say the past, I'm talking about hundreds of years ago and not kind of last week, So, I can see some really good shifts happening right now, which is very positive. Yeah.
Fantastic. So you've mentioned one prayer point. Is there anything else that we can pray, particularly for Liverpool at this time?
I really believe as a gateway place, Liverpool is really important in terms of what breaks through here will break across the nation. And I think all the creative new ways that we've been doing things, again, is a big learning curve, and that we'll learn, not just go back into the old routine when we go back into the buildings. And I think that's really important. Pray for us with the big push. It's not pray until something happens. We want to see revival, full stop. That's what we want to see. And that's what we're really intending and desperate to see. So pray, that every one of us will have a perseverance and a determination, to go for nothing less than that, really. And I think praying for all of those that have found it exciting outside the church building and won't want to come back. I think there's a lot of people like that. I think there's been an excitement amongst church online, thinking, wow, we've got these great figures, but we want to see that actually reflected back as people encounter God, really. And so I think there's quite a few prayer points there. And that God will just clear the foundations, really, that have been wrongly built, so that we can really see something beautiful and new arising, a church that's fit for purpose. I really believe that God is, remolding the church into his bride. And we won't look the same and we won't smell the same, that we're going to look like his beautiful bride, and we're going to love like his beautiful bride, and we're going to, live like his beautiful bride. And I think that's really important, that's got the king at heart, and not building our own empires or our own denominations or our own particular ministries, that we're serving Jesus and his agenda in these days. So
amen. Wow, that's great. So it's so exciting to hear what's happening, and thank you for those prayer points. And if people want to find out more about your ministry, they can go to www.cwmprayer.com.
That's right. I'm also just finished a new book in my spare time, called Extravagant Breakthroughs, which I really
extravagant prayer, didn't you?
I had Extravagant Fire and then Extravagant Adventures, and now this is Extravagant Breakthroughs. And I'm really, really excited about it. When you stop and you just look at the things that God has done, and even just in the last few years, and writing all that up, really, and giving some, ideas of how people can actually get breakthrough on not just a small scale, but on massive scales, in terms of how God has led us with the whole transatlantic slave trade and going into Africa, and God just guides you one little step at a time so that you're not overwhelmed, which is good. I think if we'd have saw the end, we would never have started the journey, because it was just too big. But because God takes you in little steps, or sometimes big steps, he brings the breakthrough. You just do your little bit,
Mm.
and then he brings the extravagance, of his presence that brings the breakthrough. So that should be available probably September or October time, I think.
Fantastic. We'll look out for that. Well, thank you for giving your time. It's been great to catch up and speak to you again. And keep living that extravagant life.
Yeah, you too. You too. God bless you.